Kenny here with Gardening Simplified. It's January 3rd, and it's time for me to start planting some seeds to get my little seedlings started. So let's take a look. All right, I've got my seed starting trays here. Now, a lot of you that's watched in the past, you know that I like to multi-sow my seeds, and then I'll break them out and transfer them into the cell trays to grow on. That way I don't have to plant uh, two seeds or more in each place and then start thinning them out or anything like that. I can take and plant whatever comes up, and then I can share some of the seeds if I've got too many plants and do that way. But first thing we're going to have to do, I've got all my tags made out because I've already selected my seeds. Now, this year, I'm not planting as many tomatoes as normal, but I am planting 4 different varieties. One variety is going to be my cherry tomatoes. Definitely Cherokee purples on my list. These are saved seeds, so these might not be quite true to the original, but I've got some Hosinator seeds I saved, and I've got some red snapper variety seeds I've saved. So that'll be my tomatoes. Now I'm going to plant sweet peppers. I have some really old bell pepper seeds here, and I say I'm going to go ahead and plant these. I've got, this is another bell pepper, the Dox DS Span, whatever it is. This is a bell pepper. It's more, it's bigger at the top and it tapers down a little bit, but it makes a large bell pepper. And they will, if you let them mature all the way, they'll turn red. And then I'm going to plant giant Ozark bell peppers. Now, normally I would grow Emerald Giants. I like the way they perform. They do a little bit better in the heat than these, but I'm not planning to really plant a lot for the market this next year as far as it goes for peppers. I normally grow a whole lot of varieties, and this year I'm cutting back, so we're not going to plant near as many plants. If we have extras, well, we might do the market for a little bit. But also, we've got some sweet banana peppers. And we've got some Greg's Grande. This is a big jalapeno. This is a big stuffing size. And we've got our hatch green chilies. These are, we like to stuff the hatch, but these are both old seeds, but these should do well. And we'll just get started with this. Okay, I've got all my seeds scattered out here. Now, I'm definitely not needing this many plants. I'm not even sure if this bell pepper, these old seeds that are darker, if they'll even come up, but I'm going to give them a chance. And a lot of these are seeds that I saved. I tend to save seeds, even though I have seeds for some of my favorite varieties, like Cherokee purple and such as that. I'll save them almost every year. Some of these seeds are about 3 years old, a little over 3.5 years old. They'll germinate fine. Now, they might be a little bit slower than if you have fresh seeds. But anyway, when you're planting seeds, now I'm using, it's a little coarser mix than what you would use if you're using seed starter. But I prefer this. I do add just a little bit of pelleted chicken litter in there, so it's got a little bit of nutrients they don't have to have. And but I want to talk about when you plant these in cups. Now, make sure whatever you're planting them in, they have holes in the bottom so the water can drain out. Now, these actually, they have a tray underneath to catch the water for whenever I water them. And you don't want your plants sitting in water, so you want it to be able to drain. Now, for those of you that want to use solo cups or something like that, I'm going to tell you, I don't recommend them. I recommend trying to find, these come from a nursery. These are just old recycled pots. A lot of times you might buy flowers. Save those old pots. People talk about disease. If you're worried about disease, go ahead and get you some bleach and some water and sterilize them. I don't ever worry about it. If the disease is here and they can't fight it, well, I don't lose that many plants. So anyway, now there's two ways you can do this after you plant them. And the way that I'm going to do it, I'm just going to cover these with the same mix. And this mix is, I talk about it in a lot of my plant videos. This is a 3-3, or it's a 1-1-1 mix. It's 1 part sifted compost, uh, wood chip compost. I run it through a sifter, get out big pieces. Perlite, 1/3 of perlite, and then 1/3 of peat moss. So the peat moss will hold the water. The compost has nutrients in it, so it'll help that out. And then the perlite gives it air, so because you have to have oxygen in the soil, otherwise you're going to end up with chemicals forming that's going to kill your plant. So if there's no air, if you give it too much water, now all I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of this over the top of these seeds. And like I say, I don't need that many plants, but the ones that jump up there early and quick, they're going to be the more vigorous ones to come up, and that's probably what I'll keep, because now my Cherokee purples, I might plant a dozen plants of them, but on most of these, 2 to 6 plants is all I'm going to plant. That's plenty enough for fresh produce, and still probably a little bit that I can still do some canning if we want, because I like to make fresh salsa and then freeze it. I prefer the fresh taste of tomatoes even after they've been frozen versus cooked tomatoes for my salsa. So if I'm gonna make a salsa for dipping, that's what I'm gonna use. Now on your seeds, most of your seeds, they don't have to be buried very deep. Now some of these will be about a 1/4 inch. That'll be fine. But when you're growing them in pots, not putting them in the ground, normally you can get by with about 1/8 of an inch of coverage on there. And this wheel, I'll come down here and I'll just pat it down just a little bit so it's got good soil contact with the seeds, and this gets started. But one thing I want to mention is when you're growing your own transplants, realize the amount of time. Now, a lot of plants grow better whenever it's warm weather and they're outside, and so whenever you have a time, it says maybe on seeds like tomatoes, I'll say 6 to 8 weeks. It's going to vary on your temperature. Now, if you're planting these inside, your temperature might be if it's a little bit warm, it's going to cause your plants to want to grow. So if you don't have adequate light for them, then you're going to end up with leggy plants. That's going to be a given. So for those of you that try to grow your own transplants in the past and they always get leggy, realize that's probably the thing, because if you have a cool place in your house, these plants will grow just fine. Once they germinate, they'll grow fine if they can stay anywhere 55 or above. They won't grow fast, but they'll grow good and sturdy. Now, I'll plant them in here. Normally this time of year, it stays about anywhere from 68 to 75. Sometimes we get warm days, but normally somewhere around 68 to 75. Even though these germinate faster at say 80 degrees, they'll germinate fine here. What I'll do is I set them on my grow station that's in here, and it has a window that comes in, and I'll put a dome over this, and this dome will cause that heat to radiate in here, and it'll actually get a lot warmer than it is in the room. And you'll see the condensation start forming on it and stuff. That's because it's getting nice and warm. It's got a greenhouse effect. Uh, if you're familiar with the greenhouse, you'll know on a sunny day, if you keep that thing closed up, and I don't care if it's 50 degrees outside, my exhaust fans will be coming on and it'll be over 100 in there if I don't get out there early enough to give it just a little bit of ventilation. So don't worry about heat mat. Now, I do use heat mats on mine, not when I'm germinating in here, uh, unless sometimes peppers want to have a little bit more heat. If they don't come up, I might put a heat mat on them. But normally when I'm going to use a heat mat, once I move these out, I have another grow station that I keep out in my workshop that's not climate controlled, and I'll put a heat mat under them if it's going to be really cool, uh, to keep the temperature up, because it can get into the 40s or even upper 30s in there. We're going to have some weather that's going to be into the 20s. Of course, these won't be out there then, but we're going to probably have some later too. So, but anyway, just because it's cold outside, don't forget that you got to start your seeds early. Peppers take 8 to 10 months. And if these get too big, 8 to 10 weeks, excuse me. I have someone tapping on my shoulder to correct me. But if they get too big, I can always pot these up into a bigger pot. Now, once they get to coming up and I have enough to transfer over to my cell trays, we'll do an update on that, and we'll show you that process. But once they get into their other cell trays, if they get too large by the time they start looking like they've got a whole lot of roots, then instead of slowing them out and letting them kind of build roots around and say getting root bound or something, which they will come back and recover from that, but it does slow them down. And when you want your produce early, you want to keep that plant growing. So if it's roots, if it's putting out to the edge, you see them coming out the bottom, it's definitely time to pot them up. But anyway, this is the process here. Realize when I say it takes 8 to 10 weeks on peppers, I try to plant them around January 1st, which it's the 3rd, to give them that 2.5 months. Now that'll put me into the middle of March. Now normally, on average, the last frost date's around the 28th of March here, the 25th, 28th, in there. So if they go 12 weeks, because it's cooler temperatures, they're not going to grow as fast, they'll be fine. And like I say, you can always pot them up bigger. Now the tomatoes, they might be a whole lot larger, but we want our tomatoes early, and if we're going to get them early, we got to have big plants. But we don't want to stress them, because we don't want them trying to fruit before we get them in the ground. We want them vigorously growing, and we'll go through that later. But anyway, it's time. Think about it. Depends on where you're at, but just figure when that last frost date is, and you can Google it, put in there last frost date in your area. It'll tell you when that average last frost date is, and that'll let you know. You can calculate back from there, and it'll let you know when you need to get your seeds planted. And if I put mine out early, I'll find some kind of protection. Just like this last season, we did have a frost come in later. It actually got just a little below freezing, but we covered them all, and everything survived fine. We just put pots over them. So there you go. If you want to see more videos like this, you want to follow along, of course, hit that subscribe, hit the bell, select all, and give it a big thumbs up. Share this video. Enjoy that gardening experience.